Thank you for taking time to speak with me. I'm very excited to discuss Screen Time, your 15th album. That's that's quite a bit. What in your career led you to want to approach this music specifically on Screen Time?
I don't know if I could point to anything in my career necessarily. It's more of these are songs that have stuck in my head for a long time. Things that I've always kind of wanted to do jazz versions of. But also, we're sort of in a climate where a lot of people are putting out albums of their own original music, which I have done and I've totally applaud. I think we should all be doing that. But also sometimes you need to kind of reach listeners where they're at and make things familiar enough that they can kind of grab on. It doesn't mean you have to spoon feed them, but also I think meeting the audience where they are is helpful. And if you think about jazz music in general, most of what we think of as like popular song comes from stage and screen from the past. All the standards that we think of come from Broadway shows or movie musicals or whatever. And so jazz musicians have always been taking that material and turning it into jazz and rather than just popular music. So that's what we're doing.
No, like that was something I was very much thinking of. Like this is very much in the tradition of jazz music. It especially in the way that you take, especially on this album, I love the fact that it's a mix of both songs with which people are likely to be very familiar. The theme to Reading Rainbow, It's a Good Feeling from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but also things like Summer Night from Sing Me a Love Song, or the love theme from Predator, which might not be immediately familiar to people, but might spark some interest. Like, how did you balance? I mean, as you mentioned, these are songs that have been in your head for a while, but like, how did you come to these particular tracks?
Um, well, the album is produced by Orrin Evans, and so when we were discussing what material we were going to record for the session, the theme of the album had not yet emerged, but um, I had said, "Hey, I'd really like to record these two songs." One of them was Love Theme from the Predator, and the other one was Summer Night. And he said, "Well, I'd really like for you to record this song by Mr. Rogers, and um, I'd really like to for you to record Dexter's tune as well, at which he's recorded and I've recorded, but we wanted to play it together. So, taking those four songs as kind of the first little bit of a list of songs that we might um, record, it just sort of seemed like, well, these are all from TV and movies, so maybe we pursue a theme here, and added a couple more, and I wrote a couple, and then we had an album.
Yeah,
So that's kind of how it came to be.
it's such a fascinating thing. I've gotten to speak with Steve Horlick, who wrote the Reading Rainbow theme, and it's a deceptively simple song, but I
Yeah.
mean it has a lot going on, which and I feel as though you and your bandmates really latch on to the complexity that lies behind the simplicity of a lot of these songs.
Sorry, was there a question?
Oh yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, no, it's the idea that you're taking these songs that are familiar to folks and taking them into interesting places. What like and they are bridged by your original tunes. Um, where did Skip Intro come from? Like because it feels very much like it's an intro song that you wouldn't want to skip.
Um, where did Skip intro? Okay, true story. Um, well, let's back up. What is Skip intro? In today's screen viewing landscape, in my opinion, we have two kinds of addictive watchers. We have binge watchers and news junkies. And these are people that can't pull themselves away from one or the other. And am a reformed news junkie, I guess you could say, a recovering news junkie. Um, and when I decided to sort of stop my news addiction, I had the NPR on while I was cooking food or, whatever, folding laundry, just always constantly being inundated by the news. Um, Certain things happened in our political climate that I didn't really dig. I just couldn't deal with the news anymore. So when I was doing all these activities, just kind of mindless activities, I started putting on Law and Order instead, just to kind of fill the space. And of course, you get through the intro and then there's that button, skip intro. Well, I don't need to see the credit sequence 5 million times, you know what I mean? So they put that button, skip intro. So that's what that means. Skip intro. I have just kind of changed one habit for another. But I was just kind of joking around with my kids and I was singing and like you might notice that the song is kind of like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, skip, intro, skip, intro. And I just was kind of humming it to myself around the house. Skip, 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 just as a gag. And my kids were giving me a hard time. They're like, you're so dumb. And I kind of challenged them. I was like, "Will you just wait? I'm going to make something out of this." So I wrote it down on paper, just this little thing that I was singing in my head. And we recorded it, and that's what it is. And I think also, though, part of it is in jazz, we really get stuck in this head, solo, 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 head format of all of our songs. And that's just something we have to get away from, now and then. There's nothing wrong with it, but also it gets a little tired for the audience. This head, solo, 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 head, or maybe trading head. So we put the trading as the bulk of the song. So the song is trading. And so if you hear it, it's sort of like a little horn, a little drums, a little trumpet, a little drums, a little horn, a little drums, like flipping channels, skipping intros. So there's not really much of a deeper meaning on it behind it than that,
It's still a great story, though. Like like I love that piece, and like that story just makes it absolutely wonderful. Now, when you were presented with the two tunes that your producer gave to you, like what were your had you did like had you heard them before? Did they give you any sort of flicker of recognition, or were they wholly new to you?
Um, Definitely knew them. I had recorded one of them before already. And something we had kind of talked about over and over again. So yeah, Warren and I, the producer, are kind of on the same page about a lot of things. So it's kind of a collaborative conversation. Um, it wasn't, it's not a situation at the label where they're like, here's your song, go make a record. We definitely had a lot of back and forth. So I have a lot of input on what's on there as well.
The some of these songs have like sort of an inherently jazzy nature. I think like John Barry or Randy Newman or even the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood theme have like this sort of very quietly jazzy theme. But I like what attracted you to Alan Silvestri's music for Predator that made you want to interpret it yourself? Because I feel like that is the one that really made my eyes pop open in terms of like, oh, I want to see where this goes.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a joke. There's no love theme from Predator, obviously. That being said, I think I love the movie. Let's just put it that way.
Mhm.
So I've been a big fan of the movie the whole time. And the score of the film is interesting because there's actually not a lot of melody in it. Um, it's mostly rhythmic. There's not a lot of melody, like you might find in other scores. So this particular melody that happens in the movie um, is kind of one of the few little points of poignant melodic phrases in the whole score, and it's played kind of by solo trumpet in a very plaintive kind of way. So obviously, I always like that because I'm like, oh, they're using that solo militaristic kind of, it almost sounds like taps, kind of. fallen soldier kind of vibe, and that's kind of what's happening in the movie. But on the other side of that, so I kind of learned how to play it with a band colleague of mine. We always kind of joked, "Hey, we should play the love theme from Predator," you know. Um, the movie, if you've seen it, is maybe not on the face of it a love story. On the other hand, we know lots of couples who are entangled and locked into this continual struggle, continual battle. You know, I know a lot of couples like that. They're just like this all the time, you know. It's this conflict all the time. And obviously they like it that way, you know. Otherwise they would leave their marriage for whatever or relationship or whatever happens to be. And so when I watched that movie, Predator, the predator, like the creature in the movie, obviously he loves it. He goes everywhere in the world to seek out this conflict because he loves it. So, or she loves it, and we're not sure what the gender of the animal is. But so in any case, that's why we kind of put it as the love theme. Like, what isn't a love story when you really get right down to it? You know, it doesn't have to be a romance to be a love story because love takes a lot of forms, right?
I love the idea of thinking of Predator as sort of the action version of Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor's Taming of the
Exactly.
Shrew.
Exactly.
Now, now that the album is out, well, I guess prior to that, like, did you work up all of these songs in the studio, or were there some live excursions in order to get them ready for recording?
Yeah, I think a lot of them were sort of workshopped on the bandstand before we went into the studio with my working band in Seattle. But some of them were worked out in the studio. You know, some of them, like I said, were kind of like You Only Live Twice, and Summer Night, and a few of the others. And the originals were sort of already in my performance repertoire. They just hadn't really either been made, I hadn't recorded them or had been a long time since I had recorded them. So, um, yeah, I guess it's maybe 50-50.
What are your plans for taking this album out on the road, if at all?
So I just got back from a release party in New York. We played 2 nights at the Jazz Gallery, Friday and Saturday. So that's that. I'm going back to New York in a couple of weeks. I'll be playing at Smalls and Bar Bayou. And then in March we have a 10-day tour, 3 nights in Seattle, 3 nights in Vancouver. Um, and I'll be in San Francisco at the Black Cat. So there's gigs here and there. You know, it's jazz music, so it's very hard to sustain, you know, especially on the West Coast. There's not like a string of venues. There's not really a circuit. So especially with this band who are pretty heavy dudes with pretty heavy schedules, you know, it's hard to make all the stars align. But you know, we do what we can.
How did the audience respond, like at hearing many of these together for the first
Oh,
time in a live setting?
yeah, they loved it. You know, the people that do the video for Imani Records, they were like, "I think you have a hit. We love this." And you know, they're 20 somethings, you know, so they were into it, man. They loved it. I think people, well, actually, in the band members too, were like, "Man, this is really like feel good music. We like playing this, you know." So I like playing it too. So I that's what we want, you know. I think um, not really in a place anymore in my thinking or in my self where I'm trying to impress people. You know, I really am trying to connect with people though. Um, and that's what's important to me. But I think that's also our job as musicians. Like, what are we doing when we stand up there and play? We're trying to affect the emotional state of another person. And um, that can look like a lot of different things. But what we're trying to communicate, what I'm trying to communicate is joy. And that's what I want to spread. And so when people hear that Fred Rogers song and they get a big smile on their face, or even a little teary-eyed. That's what I want. You know, I don't need to play real fast and high and loud to make that happen. And these songs, I think, are really good vehicles for that because they allow for a lot of expression, a lot of self-expression, but also people get it. People know what these songs are. You know.
Yeah, there's always a wonderful thing about hearing a song that you've heard, you know, hundreds of times before, interpreted in a new way that makes
Yeah.
you appreciate it even more.
Yeah. Sure. We all love that. And I think it's like scientifically proven. Familiarity is probably one of the main things that makes a hit, which is unfortunately why all pop music kind of gets to be interchangeable after a certain point of time because people just make stuff that sounds like the other stuff, and that certainly is a strategy. But like I said, there's a fine line, between pandering and reaching an audience.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, Thomas Marriott, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak to me. I'm very excited that Screen Time is out, and I'm glad that folks are responding to it so well.
Thanks, Nick. I really appreciate your time.